What's up, y'all? Welcome into the Draft Board Breakdown Show here on Grind City Media. I'm Ling Whitaker alongside Gary Parrish. And
Present.
We're going to take you through the NBA draft and get you ready for the draft a couple of weeks from now. And we've got a bunch of shows figured out here to work our way through the prospects, the teams, the rumors, the news, everything that's happening for the next few weeks to get you ready for the NBA draft. And Gary, we got to start with where it all begins. Number one pick in the draft, we already know, is going to the Dallas Mavericks. Cooper Flagg is the guy that has been at the top of the draft charts for the last year, 2 years, waiting for this draft. We're waiting to see which team would get him and have him come in and probably be a transformational player to your team. And now he goes to a team that already has some transformational players. You've been watching Cooper Flagg play for years now. He reclassified halfway through high school, ended up playing in Florida at the prep school, ends up at Duke, kind of fulfills every expectation, and now he's reached this point. At any point in his journey, did you think it wasn't going to end this way?
No, he's been on this track for a while.
Yeah.
He's not somebody you knew about when he was 12 years old, 13 years old, but once the Cooper Flagg thing became a thing, he was always headed for this. And I do think it's important the way you phrase that, because he really did meet expectations, if not exceed them, which is not easy to do given where the expectations were. Like, for him to, quote, meet expectations, do you realize that he had to do something that had never been done before, which is win the National Player of the Year award at the youngest age in history. He turned 18 in December, won all of the Player of the Year awards, or at least most of them, in March and April, and is currently, and will be probably for a while, the youngest, let's just say, Wooden Award winner in the history of men's college basketball. So to do that in any era would have been impressive. Like, we talk about one-and-done players all the time and often predict greatness for them. The truth is, when you talk about one-and-done players, freshmen who have won National Player of the Year awards, the list is very short. It's like, Anthony Davis, Kevin Durant, Zion Williamson, and Cooper Flagg joins that list. So this isn't normal. But he had to do that for people like you and I to say, well, he didn't quite live up to what he was supposed to be. He clearly did. He had Duke in position to win a national championship. They were literally the favorite to do it when the tournament started, when the Final Four began. They were up big in the national semifinals, and then that game just slipped away. But Cooper Flagg's freshman season at Duke was fabulous. An all-time great one season of college basketball. And it did not matter who won the lottery. He was going to be the number one pick. But by Dallas winning the lottery and making it clear they are going to use the pick, not move it, it's actually, I think, good for the NBA in the sense that you'll have Cooper Flagg playing for a relevant team next season. Dallas is a playoff caliber team, and we could have the number one pick in the draft. In fact, probably should have the number one pick in the draft in the Western Conference playoffs next season. So that's not always the case, obviously.
Playing an impact role for that team. Also, you mentioned the one season he played at Duke. National College Player of the Year, consensus first team All-American, Lute Olson Award, Julius Erving Award, Wayman Tisdale Award, NABC Freshman of the Year, ACC Player of the Year, first team All-ACC, ACC Rookie of the Year, ACC All-Defensive Team, ACC All-Freshman Team. It was really any chance he had to do anything, he did all of it. He managed to pull it all off.
He led Duke in 5 major statistical categories. That's not normal. Like, he did a lot of not normal stuff. And, the defensive stuff is...
That's the part I want to get to.
It's not stuff that shows up in the box score. It's not stuff that shows up in the graphics, but he is an elite defender as well. I said even before he started his freshman season, if you want him to score like Kevin Durant, you're going to be disappointed, because he doesn't play that way. He doesn't score like that. But he will fill up the box score. And if you just look at the season averages, I mean, it's
19.2 points per game.
7.5 rebounds, 4.2 assists, 1.4 blocks, 1.4 steals. And if you go over the final 25 games of the year, because he kind of got off to not a slow start, but it certainly picked up as the season progressed, then you get into around 20 points per game, above 50% from the field, above 45% from three. he was just excellent
Yeah.
and impactful on both ends of the court. And so there'll be some questions about exactly what position he plays in Dallas. He's kind of a combo forward, maybe best suited to play power forward.
Jason Kidd yesterday mentioned him at the 2.
I mean, you'll hear things like that. I mean,
Yeah.
he could float around like that, but you try to play him at the 4. Does that push Anthony Davis back to center?
Which he doesn't want to do.
Right. So you
Yeah.
got a lot of that kind of stuff to figure
Yeah.
out. But what you know is that you're going to be able to place this young man on a relevant team on night 1.
Yeah.
And he's not going to look out of place. He's not going to be overwhelmed, because that's what all the reviews were coming out of USA Basketball. I guess it was last summer.
Yeah.
It's that he was on a court with quite literally the best American players who
Yeah.
exist, and he didn't seem out of place. And there were moments where he looked, I don't want to overstate it and be
Yeah.
like, he was the
He
best
was
player on
amazing.
the court. I don't know if he's the best player on the court,
Yeah.
but he looked like he was one of the better ones on the court. He didn't look out of place, and that's when he was just 17 years old. The future's bright. He's a star.
I spoke to a veteran NBA player who was at those USA Basketball practices, and I asked him, what did you come away with watching Cooper Flagg practice against those guys? And he was like, look, I don't see him being a guy who's going to come into the NBA and average 28, 30 points a game.
Yeah.
The player he compared him to was Andrei Kirilenko.
Okay.
And he was like, maybe a better Kirilenko, a guy who can give you, the fives across all the stat categories. But Cooper Flagg can give you 15 points, but he'll also give you rebounds, assists, steals, blocks, all those different things. And you mentioned defense. That was the thing to me, because we heard already from Dallas's Nico Harrison that defense wins championships, right?
Right.
A lot of times rookies don't play defense or aren't good enough to play defense in the NBA. I figured that's kind of where we're going to have to see from Cooper Flagg right away if he's good enough to stick on the court in the NBA. How is his defense going to fit?
I think it'll be fine. He'll be better than most rookies.
Yeah.
And eventually projects as an all defensive team type of guy. He
Yeah.
could be that. And it's not going to be in the ways that you typically think of all defensive guys.
Right.
Banging the
Yeah.
floor, I'm in front of you, you can't get by me. Or, I'm blocking 4
Knocking
shots
shots
a
into the
game and
stands.
altering 7 more. It'll be a couple steals here, a couple blocks here, just rock solid stuff where you look up and you go, oh, there it is. Just look at his box scores at Duke.
Yeah.
Basically every game it was did a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a little bit of that and a little bit of that and a little bit of that, and impacted winning in a variety of ways. I don't know that he'll ever lead the NBA in scoring or lead the NBA in anything. You ready? I don't know that he'll ever lead the NBA in anything.
Any stat.
In any one stat. But he will make an impact right from the jump, and clearly has a chance to not only be the face of a franchise, but, I think to be the best player on a championship team. I don't know that I can guarantee that, just because that's a hard thing to guarantee. But for what he might lack in highlights and flash and all that stuff, he brings an incredible amount of just winning stuff. Mm-hmm. I think the phrase Dan Hurley used about players one time, that somebody asked him, what do you look for in players? And he said, the winning shit.
Yeah.
The stuff that you can win with.
Yeah.
He brings the stuff you can win with. And it's worth noting, just because sometimes you never know how this is going to go.
Sure.
This is a young man who's been very famous, and I don't want to say coddled. That was the word that was about to come out of my mouth. I don't think that's right. It's been very orchestrated.
Sure, yeah.
Every aspect of his life.
Handled.
Yes, for years. And sometimes that can really twist a young man up.
Yeah.
I think it happened to Amani Bates. I think it happened to, many years ago, Renardo Sidney. You saw these young people get too famous, too quick, and their circumstances start changing.
Yep.
They change schools. They might change states. They bounce around a little bit, and it just becomes this weird thing that they can't break out of or struggle with.
Yeah.
None of that with Cooper Flagg. You have heard nothing but positive things. Zero hints of entitlement or, but he walks around like this, or rubs his teammates the wrong way, or doesn't work. There's none of that. I'm not saying he's perfect.
Yeah.
But you don't hear any negative stuff connected to him. He's about as no-brainer of a number one prospect as you could get.
It reminds me of when I was at Slam Magazine years ago, and we saw LeBron play at ABCD camp and saw him come through, and like you mentioned with Cooper Flagg, the expectations sky high. And that's my thing with LeBron. I always say he's met every expectation, which is pretty remarkable considering how high they all were. But then we also saw guys like Lenny Cook who came up and had a lot of the same accolades, and people talk about him, and it just never panned out for them.
It can get away from you.
Yeah.
The thing that I've always tried to make myself understand is that we look at child actors, a Britney Spears, a Justin Bieber. Most people, going back to our era, Drew Barrymore.
Yeah.
Most people who get famous at a young age and have money at a young age, like they encounter some struggles.
Yeah.
Life gets complicated.
Yeah.
And in many ways, we have created basketball versions of this.
Sure, yeah.
And it can go sideways. Amani Bates is a great recent example where it just goes the wrong way in a variety of ways.
Mikey Williams.
Mikey Williams is a great example of that. It just went sideways in a variety of ways, and good luck.
Yeah.
There's just been none of that with Cooper Flagg.
Yeah.
You haven't heard. It doesn't mean that it can't pop up when he's 22 or 27. Yeah. But to date, despite all of the positions he's been put in and all the things that have been thrown at him, by all accounts, whether you talk to his parents or people who know him or his coaches at Duke, they will all tell you he's handled things remarkably well and to an unusual degree. Like the way he has handled everything has been really impressive.
So he's like the Jason Bateman of child stars. Like he's going to like turn himself into something down. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
navigate it and make it out.
It's just I've seen it up close. OJ Mayo was you get this gifted basketball player, and you start changing their life, and you look up and they don't know who they are anymore, and just this is a good sign for the Mavericks.
Yeah.
With some number one picks, you might have to worry about baggage that comes in, but at least in recent drafts, there's two big examples where the opposite seems to be true. With Cooper Flagg, everybody recognizes the basketball greatness and insists there's no other stuff to be concerned about. And with Victor Wembanyama, it was very similar. Everybody recognized the basketball greatness, and they said this guy is made of all the right stuff. Yeah. There are no concerns here with anything we've seen. You don't hear that with every draft prospect. Yeah. Often when you see somebody on draft night fall in a way that you didn't see coming in mock drafts, it's personal stuff. Mm-hmm. It's, man, we did some background checks and we don't like what we heard. There's none of that with Cooper Flagg.
It also made me think of Paolo Banchero, another Duke guy who was a number one pick and has had zero off-court things or anything else.
He had one little minor thing at Duke, which was a very minor thing. I think he was in a car that got pulled over and drinking and driving type of thing. He was not behind the wheel. But by and large, yes. Yeah. There's another person who got famous at a young age and has handled it for the most part remarkably well. And a lot of this comes down to like family dynamics and structure. I think that the thing that you'll find in common with a lot of these impressive young people is they have strong family foundations. Like Cooper Flagg has a strong family, and Paulo has a strong mother and father, has a strong family.
We're talking about red flags off the court, with, no pun intended, with Cooper Flagg. What about on the court? Like, are there any things we would look at Cooper Flagg and say, that's something he could improve upon or something he needs to work on?
Well, sure. I mean, he's 18 years old. There's a lot of stuff to improve on. The shooting. Yeah. He shot it reliably well, but is he ever going to be a high-level, consistent shooter in the NBA? There's some questions about that. And then, athleticism is always a thing that people bring up, but not really. Yeah. I mean, I think this is the most fair question you can ask about Cooper Flagg. Will he ever genuinely be one of the 5 best players in the world? Will he be that?
Yeah.
Now, that's a hard bar to set. I mean, like, is Donovan Mitchell one of the 5 best players in the world? He's great. He's just on a 64-win team and best player on it, but is he one of the 5 best players in the world? I don't know. Yeah. So that's a hard bar to set. But when you talk about a prospect like this, these are the types of things that people wonder about. Like, okay, how good – this is really the Cooper Flagg conversation. How great will he actually be?
And
The floor is incredibly high.
Yeah.
There is almost no way to even imagine him not being a very good NBA player.
And if he
it's
goes-
almost unimaginable, other than injury stuff.
Yeah, and if he goes to Dallas and he's playing alongside Anthony Davis and Kyrie Irving, like he doesn't have to be one of the 5 best players in the NBA.
Well, and that would be the other thing where people are going to have to recalibrate
Yeah,
their expectations, because it's one thing when you go to the Wizards
Yeah.
and just go take all the shots and score
Yeah.
all the points. Well, when you go to the Mavericks, I know Kyrie's going to be hurt at the beginning, but
Yeah.
eventually you're going to be on a team with Kyrie Irving and Anthony Davis. You're kind of going to be the third option
Yeah.
at best. And so the numbers are going to reflect third option stuff, at least the points per game.
right.
So people will have to recalibrate their expectations about, so the guy who was supposed to be the best player in the world is really just the 4th leading scorer for the Mavericks as a rookie? Like, because that's probably going to be something close to what it is, maybe. But in terms of like, or is there any reason to think from a basketball perspective, you could look up in 5 years and go, oh my God, he's the biggest bust in the history of drafts? None. I mean, just outside of injury stuff, there's no reason to think he won't, at the very least, be very good. The question is how great? How high is the ceiling? Will he? LeBron was expected to become the best player in the world, and he became that.
Yeah.
Can Cooper Flagg become the best player in the world?
Is
I
that
don't know.
the ceiling for him? Like, I just hear him.
I mean, I think it's ceiling for everybody. I mean, like that, you can't go better than best in the world.
I hear him talked about as he's going to be an impact player. He's going to come in, make a difference, all that. Like, I don't really hear him thrown around in that, except after the USA basketball thing where everybody.
Well,
was
there's a lot of things that, we'll just put it this way: if you were the number 1 high school player in the country, regardless of age, like you're in this class, you're the number 1 player. You reclassify, now you're in this class, you're the number 1 player.
Yeah.
And then you are the best player in college basketball in the 1 year you were there.
Yeah.
And then you become the youngest person to ever win all these awards in the history of everything. And then you're the consensus number 1 pick in the draft. The next expectation is, well, why can't that person become the best player in the world? He was the best high school player, the best college player, the number 1 pick. Why is this person not supposed to become the best player in the world? The problem is there's only one best player in the world usually, and it's very hard to become that person.
Yeah.
Like in the past 10 years, how many people have reasonably been called that?
Yeah, not
LeBron and Jokic, maybe Giannis for a minute. Yeah, so maybe in the past 10 years, you've had 3 people reasonably labeled that way.
Yeah.
That's a hard label to get, but I do think it's possible. If I were betting, I'd just bet against it because that's probably what the odds favor. Like, no, there will always be at least one person better than you. I'll take that bet.
Yeah.
But he's got a chance. He's got a chance, and that's why folks are excited about his arrival. He's got a chance to be special. And there's almost no chance that he won't be, at the very least, very good.
I would also say, like, just him hitting every one of these expectations throughout his career, like, seems to suggest that whatever the next expectation is, he's going to get that.
He has never failed to meet the expectations placed upon him. Now, the tests get harder as you go along.
Yeah.
The expectations become tougher to meet. But he's capable. He's capable for sure.
Cool. When he went to Duke, so he'll be smart. He'll be good on the test.
He's at the very least, he should be able to make good grades if those are ever placed in front of him again.
All right. Well, that takes us through Cooper Flagg. We've got a bunch more shows coming for you on the draft board breakdown. The next show we're gonna talk about the guys who might be the 2-3 picks, but that's coming in a couple days. So stay tuned for that. Stay tuned to Grind City Media for more of this show, for the Gary Parrish Show, and everything else. He's Gary Parrish. I'm Whitaker. Appreciate you joining us on the draft board breakdown.